Hey everyone, my name's Sam Durkin and welcome to Digital Painting. We're going to be painting this lovely forest scene taken from a photograph I took in Hampshire in the New Forest a couple of years ago. We're using Painter 2020 from Corel. This is not something I've used before, but I think it's worth giving it a go and we'll see how we do. Traditionally, I've been painting with acrylic on canvas, something that maybe you've seen in some of my previous videos, but today we're going to be doing a digital painting. Something new. First off, we're going to be using a 2B pencil. Painter allows for the use of a tracing paper over your photograph, so I'm using this as a way to produce an under-drawing for the painting, something to base the rest of the painting on. We don't want to be going for any major accuracy or detail in this underpainting. We're literally just trying to show where the shapes are, where the trees are, where the lines of sight may be, depths of field, and so on, just to give a general impression of where the painting's going, a kind of framework or structure to hang the rest of the painting on. So nothing too detailed. We don't want to draw every single branch, every single leaf, just to get the basic idea of where the painting is, so that we got a framework to work from in the future. So let's fast forward through this section just so you can get a general idea of what I'm doing and where I'm going with the drawing. Now that we have the pencil drawing done, it's time to move on to the real painting, or at least the underpainting. I'm going to select an acrylic style brush. As I said, I haven't really used this before, so I'm just going to choose one I think sounds about right, and we're going to go from there and see where we go. Let's have a little look. Well, that one looks good enough, so let's select that. Choose the paintbrush, select the right frame. I'm going to choose maybe the green colour first to work on. I mixed up this palette earlier, but I may not use it in the future. Let's get this nice sort of green colour. It looks about right. As you see, I've got the reference photograph here, so I can look at it while I'm working. I'm still using the tracing paper currently. I'm going to flick it on and off every now and again, just so I get an idea of what actual colour I'm putting on the canvas. This is working very generally. I just want to get the colour onto the canvas, as it were, like I would normally. Making some pretty bold strokes, just to get that colour on the canvas. The difference I notice immediately when using a digital painting is, unlike normal painting where I'd have to be dipping my brush into the paint constantly I've got an infinite supply of paint, which is very nice. Although it's not as realistic as it would be if I was working straight onto a canvas. So there's some advantages, I think, in that. And maybe some disadvantages too. There's some green here at the bottom. I need to do some painting on. So let's put some of that in. As you see, I'm pretty much using the same colour for the whole area here. This is mostly just to get some colour in. Let's take something else. Go for something a little more yellowy. Bring that colour up a bit. Yeah, that's maybe it's a little dark, but it's often better to work dark to light than it is the other way around. So let's get some of that in. I'm not going to be slavish to the photograph, because after all, if we wanted just a photograph, we just take a photograph. That's perfectly legitimate. But what we're going for here is a painting that looks like a painting and feels like a painting. Painter has this dropper tool that allows you to pick up some of the paint, or at least the colour, from your photograph or the canvas. What I'm going to do here, I think, is pick up some of the colour that's on the photograph and then mix it onto this palette. See if I can get a sort of more dynamic way of working. So rather than just always picking up of the painting, I'm going to put it straight onto this palette here. So we've got some white there, and that's nice. You can mix it on the palette. That's quite cool. So that's much more like a real painting. As I said, this is probably the second time I've used this program, so I'm learning it while you're learning it. Although this is not, I like to make sure you understand, this is not a tutorial on how to use Painter, because I'm not an expert. I paint pictures on canvas, and I'm just trying out this digital painting, and maybe we'll do some more in the future. I'm quite enjoying it at the moment. It's certainly a lot easier to get to grips with. It's a lot less messy. It's a different style. I will say that. It doesn't feel quite the same. I'm using a graphics tablet, which is like a pen and a sort of drawing pad to do it. That adds some more sort of realism to it, because as you press harder, you get a sort of thicker stroke and so on. But yeah, we're just trying to get some of this. There's sort of these dark areas where the light and the sky are coming through the trees. Here, there's this sort of blue area, and I would paint like this on canvas. I'm adding maybe some extra in that I wouldn't maybe have done. It isn't exactly on on the photograph, but like we said, we're not working to get an exact copy of the photograph. Let's pick a different colour here. Maybe that's looks like black. Now, normally on a canvas, I'd be very hesitant to use a pure black, partly because pigment-wise on a canvas, when you're mixing directly into black that's on the canvas, you're going to get a colour that almost kills your painting. But this is a digital painting, so things work slightly differently. See, I've picked a colour from the colour palette I've mixed, which is kind of off black. But we'll see how that goes. I'm just trying to get the general idea of where this big main tree is, because this is quite a dominant feature in the painting. You want to sort of get that in. Just flick that tracing paper back on there. So just get a general idea of where the shapes of the trees are in the dark areas. Obviously, as we go on, this tracing paper will get harder and harder to use, because essentially we'll have painted in so much that it becomes dominates the picture, and we'll have to just revert to painting by reference to the photograph that we've got to the side there. But for the time being, I think we can sort of get a general idea of where the trees are. We're not, as you see, I'm hardly trying to paint these in exactly as they are, just going to get the general idea of where they are. This is how I'd work on a canvas. It's possible that we may not have needed to do the pencil sketch to start with, but that's what I would have done on canvas, so that's why I've done it here. I'm just going to carry on using this dark colour, maybe just do almost like a sketch. It goes on a lot faster than if you're painting with actual paint. I'd have to be dipping this brush into the paint constantly. Yeah, it looks pretty crazy at the moment. But this is how I'd paint on a canvas anyway. It would be messy. Maybe a little messier than this. I'd probably have used a larger brush just to get sort of an undercoat paint on the canvas to start with. But this will do it. I mean, the paint's going on so quickly, it's sort of unnecessary to paint with a huge brush here. Yeah, that's quite a nice brown. Now, many of you who follow my painting studies in the past would have seen me do traditional painting on a traditional canvas, and I haven't done that for quite some time or put any videos up. I've still been doing occasional paintings, but I have actually been very unwell for the last few years. I've had a heart operation and discovered that I've got bipolar, both of which have made it a little harder maybe to get on and do my artwork as much as I'd like. Physically, the demands for painting when you've got a heart condition, while it doesn't seem like it's a massively physical activity, waving your hands around on a large canvas for hours on end actually does get extremely tiring, and that has put me off doing it. But that's one of the reasons I've got this digital painting, because it takes some of that physical effort off of me and allows me to do some actual painting. And with the bipolar, of course, that also doesn't help with dealing with difficulties like that. The depression that comes along with bipolar is maybe not something we all want to talk about or think about, but it certainly does make it harder sometimes to deal with adversity, because it can feel very difficult to do almost anything at all when you're in a depressed state. One of the reasons I like doing forest paintings and nature paintings is because they're relaxing and calm looking, and they uplift your spirits. It's lovely taking a walk in the countryside, looking at the trees and feeling the wind on your face. And if we can make a painting that brings those kind of feelings to life, then I think it makes everyone a little happier. It makes everyone's life feel a little bit better. I've heard many artists suggest that you should use your artistic pain or your depression or whatever and put that onto the canvas, but for me, I would prefer to make everyone's life a little bit nicer, maybe a little bit brighter, because why spread the misery around when you can spread some sunshine, light, happiness to others? Seems like a nicer thing to do. There's enough darkness in the world as it is. So anyway, let's get back to this painting and just enjoy the colours. Really quite enjoying this mixing on this palette. It is bringing back sort of feelings of actually doing a proper painting. I'm quite impressed with this program. I'm not sponsored by them. I bought this out of my own money, and I'm sure there's other painting programs that are like this. I haven't used Photoshop, so I really can't comment whether that does similar things. I'm sure you could probably achieve similar results in another program. If you've used any art programs on the computer, I use a PC, so if you've got anything on there that you could suggest in the comments to me that aren't too expensive, obviously, I'd be happy enough to maybe try them out in the future. Ooh. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. That's something you don't have to worry about when you're painting on canvas. You're never going to get an error message from your palette. Well, that's a nice green there. Sort of yellowy green there. Let's put that on. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that works nicely. Yeah, we've almost got this canvas covered. Right, let's fast forward through the rest of this, and once we've done this underpainting, we'll get into a bit more detail. Okay, let's start getting into the meat of this now. Getting some of the trees and things put onto the painting. I'd consider this sort of, we're in the sort of early midpoint of the painting. We've got our underpainting on. We've got the trees coming into the thing. I made another mistake there. But, let's see what we got. Let's get all the dark areas in, maybe to start with here. Let's get some of these branches in. This part of the painting obviously can feel a little tense. I mean, you've made this lovely background, and now you're drawing some dark, heavy lines over it. But we're going to carry on painting over these lines in the future, so once again, don't be too afraid to put some dark areas in. I keep referring back to this tracing paper. It's quite a useful feature. I don't want to overuse it though. Like I could zoom in and we could go into high level details and just do a little bit at a time, but once again that would sort of destroy the painterly effect. It's making me feel like I possibly need a second monitor almost, maybe a monitor that I'd have this reference photograph on to look at. But I think for you in the video it's more useful you seeing what I'm working from while I'm working from it, so maybe it's not too bad working in its little frame. And also I'd have to buy a second monitor and that's not a cheap thing to do. But yeah, that's good. Using a nice largish brush just to get some of this dark area in. It is blending really very nicely. There's quite a lot of tools this program seems to come with to allow you to adjust the paint, which is obviously something that you do naturally with your paintbrush. How much water you add to it, how long the paint on the canvas has been drying for. Obviously the advantage of this is I could come back to this tomorrow and it wouldn't be, it would still be wet if I wanted it to be, which is something you can't do on a traditional canvas, and it's obviously good for a digital painting because it allows me to work at my own speed, achieve results maybe I couldn't have done on the canvas. Of course there is something to be said for working with the natural effects of drying and the speed at which you need to work. It all brings something to the painting, which I'm trying to emulate here. There's a little bit of a gap between these trees here, so let's try to bring that in. Yeah, that's nice. We just obliterate some of these dark areas that we've made. We won't be keeping this shape in the future entirely, but it's pretty good. Let's just adjust this. Let's see what this does. Okay, so if I increase that, and maybe we'll get more of a mess. Yeah, that seems to sort of mix in more. It's all just learning. I think the best thing to do when you're learning something is just to play with it. I'm sure I'll get better at this. It's just practice. It's the same way as anything. I'm hoping I can achieve my my painting style. I think it feels like the painting feels like it does when I'm painting on the canvas. I'm not mixing paint in quite the same way as I would do, which is an interesting way to work. But it's not I don't think it's better or worse. Because normally there'd be a little bit more mixing on the canvas, which is why I've turned up this blending thing. Because when you're working on a wet canvas, the paint all mixes in with itself constantly. Although parts of the painting would be dry, parts of the painting would be still wet, which you're not getting on this. It's essentially, it's either all wet or it's all dry, which once again has its advantages and disadvantages. It's quite nice to work on a canvas where there's dry areas that you're then painting over that are sort of permanent, whereas this means that when you're working this blending area, it's all dry. I think there's probably techniques, and I'm sure somebody in the comments who's used this program before can tell me how you'd go about making sure areas of the painting had remained dry. But for the time being, I'm just playing around and just using it as is. Let's get a bit more of the green as we sort of painted all that out pretty early on. I think this foreground area has gone a little tricky to do. There's some sort of very large areas of sort of greenery here. I'm not quite sure what this plant is, but it's like a massive sort of ground growing leaves. I'm sure maybe somebody who understands what plants grow in a forest would know what that is. This is the New Forest in the south of England. I went out and took this photograph probably a couple of years ago. Well, I think I've waffled on quite long enough here. Let's fast forward through the next part of the painting and we'll get towards the end, because I'm sure you're all tired of hearing me waffle on. Well done, you've made it almost all the way to the end. Thank you for watching this video. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, make a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Goodbye.